right, so y'all go ahead and do the factoring and the math knowledge question for today. Pause the video, and then once everyone is finished, you can unpause the video and I'll go over the correct answers. So for the factoring, we're going to remove the 4 by multiplying it by the 1. So we're going to have x squared minus 4x plus 4. Then we're going to replace the 4. So we'll have 4x minus 2 and 4x minus 2. These will both reduce to 2x minus 1 and 2x minus 1, which we can write as 2x minus 1 squared. And so that would be your answer. Then it asks about the perimeter of a rectangle. So I've got a rectangle. It tells us a length is 10 and a width is 5. So the perimeter, well, this side is 10 and this side is 5. So add those up and you get 30. Okay, so we are looking at lesson 77 today, finding surface areas and volumes of cones. So hopefully you'll understand how to find surface area and volumes of cones after this lesson. So a cone is a three-dimensional figure with a circular base and a curved lateral face that connects the base to a point called the vertex. So it's a three-dimensional figure, it's a solid that has a circular base and a curved lateral surface that connects your base to your vertex. And so that's what a cone looks like in case you aren't familiar with a cone. The circular face of the cone is the base of the cone. So this figure down here is the base. The vertex of the cone is the point opposite the base. So here's the base, so the vertex is up here, right there. The altitude of the cone is the perpendicular segment from the vertex to the plane that contains the base. So from the vertex going straight down to the base, it's got to be perpendicular. That is the altitude. The slant height of a cone is the distance from the vertex to a point on the edge of the base. So it's the slant, it's the slanted side, the slant height. We talked about slant height whenever we dealt with pyramids. The radius of a cone is the radius of the base of the cone. So the radius is the radius of the circle of the base. So that's some terms that go along with your cones. If the altitude of your cone has an endpoint on the center of the base, then it is a right cone. So whenever you draw your cone, if our altitude is a right angle at the center, then the cone that we have is a right cone. So it has to be a right angle right here. In an oblique cone, the altitude does not intersect the center of the cone. So you either have a right cone or you have an oblique cone. And if it's oblique, it's tilted just a little bit. We've talked about oblique this year. Okay, so the lateral surface area formula is pi RL. R is the radius, L is your slant height. So lateral surface area is pi RL. We have talked about this formula before, 1/2 perimeter times the slant height. While the perimeter of the base is 2 pi r, because it's the circumference, and 1/2 of 2 pi r is just pi r, and then times your slant height. And so that's why they just write pi RL. But your lateral surface area is technically perimeter times the slant height. So looking here, we want to calculate the lateral area of the cone to the nearest hundredth of an inch. So we're going to use our formula, pi RL. On this figure, our R is a 4 and our L is a 12. And so we end up with 48 pi. But it says to the nearest hundredth of an inch. So we need to use our calculator, and we actually need to plug that in. And so if you plug in 48 pi, you should get 150 it's 796. So that would be 80 and then inches squared. So 150.80. Now for the next one, we want to find the lateral surface area. So again, we do pi RL. And so we have pi. Our radius is not going to be 6. If you look, they have the whole thing drawn in, so our diameter is 6. So our radius is 3, and then our L is 13. So 3 times 13 is 39, and then we have pi. So if you multiply those, you should get 122.52 inches squared. And so that would be your answer for that one. Looking at total surface area. The total surface area is the lateral surface area plus the area of the base. So your lateral surface area is pi RL, and then your base is pi r squared. And so that's your formula for the surface area of a cone. Pi RL plus pi r squared. So we want to find the total surface area of a cone, and it says in terms of pi, with a slant height of 9 and a base radius of 5. So we're going to use our formula. So we have pi r of 5, L is 9, and then plus pi 5 squared. So this first part is going to be 5 times 9, 45 pi, plus 25 pi. And so if you add those together, you're going to get 70 pi, and it's centimeters, and it's squared because we have area. Okay? Looking at volume. The volume of a cone is 1/3 area of the base times the height. If you want, you can write it as 1/3 pi r squared times your height. Pi r squared is the area of the base for a cone because it's a circle. So that's your volume formula. 1/3 area of the base times the height. Now for a cone and a cylinder, the cylinder is area of the base times the height, and the cone is 1/3 area of the base times the height. The cone is 1/3 as big as a cylinder that has the same circular base and the same height. Okay, so let's look here. What is the volume of a right cone with a radius of a 4 and a height of a 7? So our volume formula is 1/3 pi, let's start over. Volume is 1/3 pi r squared times your height. So 1/3 pi, our radius is 4, and our height is 7. And so you need to say 4 squared, which is 16, and then multiply that by 7. And so I have 112/3 times pi. And you can leave it like that if you would like. It didn't tell us to round to anything. So if you want, you can leave it like that, or you can write it as a decimal, and you should get 117.29. And they didn't give us units, but it would just be units cubed because we have volume. So that would be your units cubed. Looking at the next example, we have a funnel that's used for extra large family size funnel cakes. It's a right circular cone, 7 inches tall with a radius of 3.6 inches. How much batter can it hold? And it says to use 3.14 for pi. So when it's talking about how much batter, that's referring to the volume, which that's our volume formula, 1/3 pi r squared times h. So 1/3 pi, our radius is 3.6, and our height is 7. And so when we plug it into our calculator, it says to use 3.14. So I know normally I tell you to do the pi button, but on this one it says to use 3.14. And so if you plug it in, you should get 94.9536. And so that's about 95 inches cubed worth of batter. Okay, so that's how that example works. Moving on to the practice problems. I want y'all to try these. And so y'all pause the video and then unpause it after you've finished them. For the lateral surface area, we have pi RL. So pi 2 times 7, which is 14 pi. And it didn't say to round it, so if you want to leave it as 14 pi feet squared, you can. Or you can say 43.98 feet squared. Either one works for me because it didn't specify how to write your answer. For the next one, the total surface area, we have pi RL plus pi r squared. So we have a radius of 3. I'm going to come back to my slant height because they didn't give it to me. This 8 here is not the slant height. We have an 8, which is our height. That is not the slant height. Those are two different things. Our base is 3. And then we are looking for the slant height. Which is the hypotenuse of this triangle. So we can do 3 squared plus 8 squared equals L squared. So 3 squared is 9, 8 squared is 64. And so add those together and you get 73. And so the square root of 73 is your L. And so we can plug that in right here. On this one, since I have a square root of a number, I'm going to not leave it in terms of pi. I'm going to get a decimal number, but if you want to leave it in terms of pi, you can. You'll just have 3 squares of 73 pi plus 9 pi, which you can't combine those. So if you want to leave it like that, you can. Or if you multiply it out, you should get 108.80 meters squared. Okay? So that's how that one would work. If they don't give you the slant height, then they're going to have to give you the height of the cone, and you'll have to use Pythagorean theorem to find the slant height. So looking at the volume formula is 1/3 pi r squared times your height. So 1/3 pi, your radius is 6, and your height is 10. So 6 squared is 36. Times 10 is 360, and divided by 1/3 is 120. And so if you multiply that by pi, you'll either have 120 pi, or you can write 376.99, which goes to 377 if you want to round to a whole number. But your units is going to be inches cubed on all of these. You can write any of those that you would like. It doesn't matter to me because it didn't tell you where to round. Looking at this next one, what's the volume of the cone? So again, 1/3 pi r squared times your height. So 1/3 pi, our radius, they give us a diameter, so our radius is half of that, so 10, and then our height is 70. And so on this one, you would have 700 times pi, and then divide by 3. And you should get, not 700, I'm sorry, 7,000, because it's 70 times 100. So you should get 7,330, and then 0.38 centimeters cubed. Okay, so again, on these, when it doesn't tell you where to round, you can leave it in terms of pi. You can round to a whole number or round to a tenth or 100th. Doesn't matter to me. Any of those works. So looking at the challenge question, we have a right cone that has a total surface area of 30,144. The radius is 3/5 the slant height of the cone. Assuming that pi is 3.14, what are R and L? Explain how you arrived at your answer. So y'all pause this, try and figure it out, and then I'm going to go over it for you. So your surface area formula is pi RL plus pi r squared. We know that the total surface area is 30,144. And then we have pi, and we need to write R and L in some way. R is 3/5 L. So we have 3/5 L times L, and then plus pi and 3/5 L, and that gets squared. So this would be 30,144. Then we have pi 3/5 L squared plus pi 3/5 squared would be 9/25 L squared. Both of these have a pi in them, and so we can divide by pi on these two and make them cancel. And then on the right side we can divide by pi. But they said to use 3.14. So you're going to do 30,144 and divide by 3.14. And you get 9,600. And then we have 3/5 L squared plus 9/25 L squared. So we can make 3/5 15/25. So we have 9,600. 15 plus 9 is going to be 24/25 L squared. So multiply by the reciprocal. So 9,600 times 25/24 is 10,000. And that's what L squared equals. So take the square root, and L will be 100. And so 3/5 of 100 is 60. And so that would be your R. And so that's how I figured out my L and R. So if you got it, good job. If not, that's okay. It was a challenge question, but I hope you understood how I arrived at my L and R. All right, so your homework is 1 through 30, so you need to make sure you do that tonight so that we can go over any questions that you have tomorrow.